All right. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Check, check, check. I think you can hear me. Sounds a little low. But anyways, what's going on? Friendly folks and neighbors, how you doing? All right. Got some faces in the chats that we haven't seen in a while. What up? All right, you can hear me? Cool, cool, cool. All right, greetings all. Thanks for joining in to this BBN episode on Easter, or whatever you want, a fertility day, whatever you want to call it. But good to see you. Thanks for being here. And we're live on all the channels currently occupied by Black Bear News, which is YouTube, Callin, Rockfin. Got some Rockfin folks. What's up, Rockfin folks? How you doing? All right. And we're live on Twitter as well. So if you're watching on Twitter, you know what to do. Retweet or like up or comment or something. If you can get to the chat bar, you can throw me a comment, and I can see your comment in my StreamYard. So that's cool. All right. Let's talk about some things. There's so many things. That's why I'm doing the show. There's just so many things that I can't leave it all. I cannot leave it all. Let's start with this really good little photo essay. Here from NPR. It's from a couple days ago. And, you know, just showing, I think, what should be obvious to a lot of people. I was listening to a good, someone saying like, well, someone who's extremely popular, kind of crazily on every platform that I see this person now, literally everywhere. It's starting to actually make me kind of feel some kind of way. Not like kind of in the way of like, where did this person come from and why are they literally everywhere all of a sudden? Seems, I don't know. Anyways, I'm not going to get too far into it, but it seems slightly psyopy, but whatever. Or maybe there's just a way to, um, maybe people out there crack the code, the algorithm code, and they know how to make themselves be literally omnipresent on social media in the matter of like a couple of weeks or a month. It seems crazy to me, but anyways, all that aside, I was watching this very person say basically exactly what I have been saying for years now, which is that basically that the conspiracy is not that climate change is a hoax, but that it's more real than, if you can't see the obvious signs with your own eyes. Why is my, gosh darn it, my microphone seems to go in and out a lot. But if you can't see the effects of climate change or the destruction of the planet by humans with your own eyes, if you can't see that obviously things are off or different, the insects are gone, that trees are dying, that the landscape or just the landscape is being poisoned, or we are being slowly poisoned with microplastics and glyphosates and all that kind of stuff. Drop the name. I ain't gonna drop the name, but you might know who I'm talking about. Obsolete. You might know who I'm talking about. Anyways, basically just pointing out that they've got the left and the right divided among, they're the nicely divided thought silos on climate change, or whether it's not happening or happening, or whether we can fix it or not fix it, or whether we're it's real but it's not that bad, or or it's totally fake because the people in charge are talking about it, and that just means it's fake because they're talking about it, which is actually just not a really great idea. Anyways. So here we're just going to look at some just obvious, this, we can enter this into the file of data and evidence, or things you can see with your own eyes, right? Or the eyes of a camera. I don't think that these are AI created pictures. I think these are pretty real. Photos show what humans have done to the planet in the Anthropocene age. The Anthropocene being the era when humans' effect on what is happening on the planet Earth has become so large, it's outpaced natural variability. It's outpaced what would happen on the Earth, due to just the natural fluctuations in climate and whatnot. So here we're going to go through some of these pictures. No, not right now, NPR. This is an aerial photo of sawmills in Lagos, Nigeria. Look at that. And look at these houses that are kind of sitting on the tiniest of islands in the water, or no, are these houseboats? Are these boats? I think they're boats. I can't tell. This looks like land over here. And look at all this wood that they're just sending down the stream here. But that looks like some planet nibbling, as my old friend Hambo might say. Some good old planet nibbling. Humans have made an indelible mark on the planet since the mid 20th century. We've accelerated the digging of mines, construction of dams, expansion of cities, and clearing of forests for agriculture, activity that will be visible in the geological record for eons to come. Some scientists are calling it the Anthropocene era, or the age of the humans. Anthropos is Greek for human, and argue that geologists should recognize it as a distinct chapter in Earth's history. But after more than a decade of investigation and debate, that won't happen, at least for now. In a contentious vote earlier this month, a panel of geologists declined to designate a new geologic epoch starting in 1952, when the United States tested its first thermonuclear bomb. The 1950s, proponents contend, marked an inflection point in humanity's impact on Earth as globalization increased. Burning of fossil fuels and the use of nuclear weapons left unmistakable signs of our influence in the geologic record. Ultimately, most of the panel considered that too narrow a view. There's no doubt that the Anthropocene human transformation of the Earth is already in the geologic record. The evidence speaks for itself. It's permanent and embedded in the crust of the Earth, says Earl Ellis, an environmental scientist at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. But that evidence extends much farther back in the time than the 1950s. He says, defining the Anthropocene as this specific chunk of geological time would limit the usefulness of the term, Ellis says. The vote basically clarified that the Anthropocene belongs to all the sciences. It's not something that is just up to geology to define in this kind of narrow way. Okay. I see where they're going. I mean, that sounds correct on the surface, right? Years before this final vote, photographer Edward Burtynsky and filmmakers Jennifer Beichwall and Nicholas Depensier were inspired by the ongoing debate over this new geologic era. These three Canadian artists traveled to 22 countries to research and document places of obvious physical human incursions on the landscape, says filmmaker Depensier. They created over 50 images capturing the impact of humans on the Earth, like a sprawling 30-acre garbage dump in Kenya, large swaths of deforestation in Borneo, and waterways damaged by oil siphoning in Nigeria. Their expansive, multidisciplinary body of work is called the Anthropocene Project. The project, which includes photography, film, virtual reality, and augmented reality, took 4 years to complete and launched in September 2018. The exhibition has been shown at museums around the world, most recently at Taiwan's Kaohsiung Museum of Fine Arts. The Anthropocene Project is almost looking back from a projected future, from the future geologist investigating what will remain in the rock record long after we've gone, Depensier adds. In the wake of the vote, a spokesperson for the project says whether it's an official epoch or not, reality remains the same. Here is a selection of photographs from the project. This is, well, obviously whole lot of plastic. The Dandora landfill in Nairobi, Kenya, is a sprawling 30-acre dump that grows by an average of 850 tons of solid waste a day. A day. This is a stark image here. In Nigeria's oil-rich Niger Delta, oil bunkering, the practice of siphoning oil from pipelines, has transformed parts of the once thriving delta ecosystem into an ecological dead zone, according to the UN Environment Program. An ecological dead zone. This is the Cerro Dominador solar project in Chile. Looks like it's still under construction, but look how big this is going to be. Looks like this is all going to be filled out by these solar panels. This is almost beautiful if it wasn't so horrible at the same time. This is an underground potash mine in the Ural Mountains of Russia. And, well, what are they getting here? Potash for fertilizer, right? The potassium-rich salt is mined to produce fertilizer. The team says that the mine shows the impact of modernized agricultural practices that help feed Earth's 7.5 billion people. The spiraled pattern seen here is caused by the machines used to extract the salts. And if it weren't a frightening sign of the destruction of the planet by man and machine, I would call this a really nice piece of art. Thank you guys. Yes, those are mirrors, not solar panel. You're right. You guys are right. Not solar panels, mirrors. That the picture of the solar farm. Yes. This is an aerial view of a palm plantation on the island of Borneo. Enormous tracts of tropical rainforest have been cleared to grow the lucrative crop, which is used to create palm oil, a vegetable oil that is also used in food processing. And you can see the stark contrast between forest and what used to be forest. What are these? You might ask. A tetrapod factory in Dongying, China. A tetrapod factory. These concrete blocks are dropped into the ocean to create a barrier that protects low-lying oil refineries from rising sea levels. According to a recent scientific review, human beings have now produced enough concrete to cover the entire globe in a 2 millimeter thick layer. Nice. Way to go, humans. Nicely done. Speaking, I'm going to segue for just a second here. Speaking of that, excuse me, makes me think of something else that I just saw. Let's see if I can find it. Can I find it quickly? That is the question. Oh, I think I can. Here we go. We'll come back to this in a second. But this is an interrelated post. Related news. Let's look at this. From Dr. Professor. That time in 2020 when anthropogenic mass surpassed biomass. Anthropogenic mass. What we have made. What we have made. So, if that's not a sign of the Anthropocene, I don't know what is. You tell me what it is. Anthropogenic mass has now surpassed biomass. So, the weight of all living things, biomass, being surpassed by the weight of all the things that humans have made in 2020. But the Earth is so big. Okay. Okay. The Earth's so big, there's no way humans can destroy it. Okay. Sure. Tell me more. Let's look at this. A marble quarry in Carrara, Italy. Humans have been mining the city's marble deposits for 2,000 years, and we're still here. Well, we're still here. I'm not a climate change guy. Okay. Yuck. A 3,400 acre Exxon petrochemical plant in Baytown, Texas produces materials for tires, car bumpers, and over 500,000 barrels of crude oil per day. If you're not, aware of the ruse, if you will, of electric vehicles, consider just the tires alone, right? Because the thing that internal combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles have in common is that, well, I mean, they have a lot of things in common. It's just the engine. Pretty much everything else is the same. But the tires. Last I checked, they use the same tires. They use the same tires that require what? A whole lot of fossil fuels to produce, and they are extremely toxic to produce. They also are toxic in their use. Just the rolling of the tires on the ground, and consider the highways and the byways that the electric vehicles travel on also take a whole lot of emissions and fossil fuels to produce. Last I checked, the construction of those things aren't changing either. So tell me more about how electric vehicles are going to make things better on the planet. I'm all ears. But those tires, in just the traveling over the road, create a ton of pollutants. A ton of pollutants. Hey, Free Assange, I'm going to take your call, but can you just give me like a minute of like a thought, and just keep it, just give me what's on your mind, and I'm going to let you go because I want to get back to this story. What's up, man? Hold on. You still there?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Hey, Black Bear, nice to see you still at it, informing the public. I
Trying.
want to give you respect for that.
Thanks.
Um, but I'm a little bit on another side of this.
Okay.
I don't really believe in anthropogenic climate change anymore. And I do
No?
support electric cars, but not Teslas, like the old school, because the electric car was actually older than the internal combustion car.
Yes,
But,
you're actually right. You're right
but
about
the
that.
thing is, they only went like 20 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what we need to get back to. I know like the convenience, modern day people don't want to really like accept that only 20 miles an hour. Maybe we could do it 30 without it being as dirty as the Tesla cars. But it's going to be a major inconvenience for people's lives. But I think that's what we need to go back to. We got to, like people say, talk about balance.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm tired of walking on the street breathing in all that crap. And then there's the old trucks, and then there's those fuck boys who put the mufflers where it intensely smokes. I'm tired of breathing in that shit.
Yeah,
Like it's fucking ridiculous.
I hear you.
I do believe in electric cars in this, but not the lithium extraction and poison in the third world. Try to find like a happy medium
Okay.
where it's slower and it's not as hazardous of chemicals to create the electric car. But yeah, it's gonna suck going 20 and 30 on the highway, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Breathing in all this crap is terrible. As for the wheels, I don't have a good solution, but there was this a couple of years ago. This guy came out with a Tweel where he like it's like carbon nanotubes, and yeah, it's going to be expensive, but it's a lot stronger than a tire and wheel thing we have now. And maybe we could work with silk. There was some genetic experiments working with trying to put like spider silk through silkworms to get
Okay.
that
Okay.
strength. And yeah, the yields right now are pretty low, but you know we could work on it and try to make it to where people can have cars. I don't believe in degrowth, but I do believe in that we have to deconvenience our lives a little bit. I know
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
easy for me
I'm
to
with you.
say it.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah. All right. Thanks for your thoughts,
I don't
man.
want to.
Thanks for your thoughts.
All right.
I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna get back to this, but thank you for calling in. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Deconvenience. That's a good word. Deconvenience. Haven't heard that one. I like it. I like it. That and on that note, that's the end of that little photo essay. Um, real quick. Okay, I'm going to move on to another article here. Um, let's see. I'm going to move on to another article that I saw from I got from Roger Hallam. And we'll talk about this real quick, guys. For anybody, I'm doing a live music show tonight or today in a few hours at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And it's a private YouTube stream, and I'm asking people to pay to watch the show. But if you really want to watch, the show, and you don't have any money, and you want to watch the show, send me a message, preferably on Twitter, like DM me on Twitter, or you can send me a message at blackbearnews@gmail.com. And I will give you a link if you really want to watch the show and you don't have money to sign up to pay for it. But if you want to pay to watch the show, you can go to kevinsandbloom.com and check it out. And anyways, it's going to be, I first was shooting for 35, 45 minutes, but I might actually go a little bit longer. But anyways, if you want to watch the show, go check that out. All right. Let's see. Let's get to this. From Yale Environment 360. Nations are undercounting emissions, putting UN goals at risk. Because of lax rules, national inventories reported to the United Nations grossly underestimate many countries' greenhouse gas emissions. The result, analysts say, is that the world cannot verify compliance with agreed emissions targets, jeopardizing global climate agreements. Well, I'm so surprised. Knock me over with a feather. Anyways, let's get into this. They are supposed to be the climate savers' gold standard, the key data on which the world relies in its efforts to lower greenhouse gas emissions and hold global warming in check. But the national inventories of emissions supplied to the United Nations Climate Convention, the UNFCCC, by most countries are anything but reliable, according to a growing body of research. You don't say. The data supplied to the UNFCCC and published on its website are typically out of date, inconsistent, and incomplete. For most countries, I would not put much value, if any, on any of the submissions, says Glenn Peters of the Center for International Climate Research in Norway, a longtime analyst of emissions trends. The data from large emitters is as much open to questions as that from smaller and less industrialized nations. In China, the uncertainties around its carbon dioxide emissions from burning coal are larger than the total emissions of many major industrial countries. And companies preparing data for its carbon trading system have been accused of widespread data fraud. You can see what the inherent problems with the whole carbon trading scheme is already. I mean, there are already issues with it, but is and are going to be. In the United States, an analysis published this month of the air over the country's oil and natural gas fields found that they emit 3 times more methane, a gas responsible for a third of current warming, than the government has reported. The United States, you don't say. The existing patchwork of greenhouse gas inventories is woefully inadequate and rife with measurement errors, an analyst says. Meanwhile, a Yale Environment 360 review of UN data has found that Qatar, the natural gas-rich Gulf state with the world's highest per capita CO2 emissions, has all but given up publicly reporting its emissions. Its last formal submission to the UNFCCC only covered emissions up to 2007. Since then, the country's undeclared emissions have almost doubled. The proof of these greenhouse gas bookkeeping failings lies in the real atmosphere. By one recent count, national emissions inventories total just 70% of the actual additions to the air, as calculated using remote sensing and model analysis. The remaining 30% are unaccounted for. As a result, says analysts, the world is flying blind, unable either to verify national compliance with emissions targets or figure out how much atmospheric room, quote unquote, countries have left for emissions before exceeding agreed warming thresholds. The UNFCCC requires countries to report regularly and in detail on their greenhouse gas emissions. Moving confidently towards net zero emissions requires high-quality emissions statistics for tracking countries' progress, says Jan Minks, a climate change policy analyst at Berlin's Mercator Research Institute on Global Commons and Climate Change. But for many countries, including some of the largest emitters, analysts say no such reliable statistics exist. One reason is that the reporting rules for national inventories are a political compromise. They are precise and detailed for rich developed nations known in UN climate jargon as Annex 1 nations. Even if there are gaps, these are the gold standard, well-resourced, and peer-reviewed, says Peters. But the rules are much less rigorous for developing countries known as non-Annex 1 nations, which prior to the 2015 Paris Agreement did not have emissions targets. Data submissions from them can be arbitrary, sometimes outright implausible, and are rarely independently checked, analysts note. This even though many developing nations, including China, have emissions greater than their developed counterparts. As a result, 2 of today's 3 biggest emitters, China and India, as well as oil-rich Gulf states with per capita emissions higher than any Annex 1 nation, need only comply with the less strict reporting standards. And this actually, again, this indicates the entire concept of climate change is worse than they're letting you know side of the argument, right? Then the climate change is a fraud and a hoax. No, the fraud and the hoax are happening in the assessing of what we're actually doing to the planet. And that's being committed in the name of, having things carry on, but, business as usual, right? We don't want to really report all the damage that we're doing because, we want to tamp it down a little bit so that we can, so we have room for error, i.e., room to keep on doing what we're doing, into the near future while we kind of let go of the consequences of what's going to happen to us long term. And yes, there are lots of other agencies and entities worldwide who are not required to report their emissions, right? Yes. You guys are right. Yes, you guys are right. The military industrial complex is not, we're not even getting all the emissions, and we know that those emissions are higher than anything else that's being reported. So you guys are absolutely right. The existing patchwork of greenhouse gas inventories is woefully inadequate, concluded Amy Luers, Director of Sustainability Science at Microsoft, in a 2022 review with academic colleagues for Nature. They are rife with measurement errors, inconsistent classification, and gaps in accountability. The situation is made worse, says co-author Lihi Yona, an environmental lawyer at Stanford University, by inflexible and outdated UN guidelines for national reporting. Qatar, regarded as the world's highest per capita emitter, has only filed a formal inventory of its emissions once, with the data for 2007. Nice. The reasons for the data gaps vary. Some emissions are eminently measurable but are expressly excluded from the UN reporting system because there is no agreement on how to apportion them to national inventories. These include international aircraft and shipping, which make up around 5% of global emissions. Wow. International aircraft and shipping. Another category is military activity. So you guys already called this in the chats, but they're bringing it up. It is one of the most urgent, says Matthias Jonas, an environmental scientist at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis in Austria. He has found that military fuel use, ammunition firing, and fires set off by bombing during the first 18 months of the conflict in Ukraine caused more emissions than Portugal. Another study estimated that the U.S. military also emits more CO2 than Portugal's national total. The British advocacy group Commonwealth last year, oh, that's cute, Commonwealth, last year calculated that globally armed forces may be responsible for more than 5% of global CO2 emissions. Globally armed forces are responsible for more than 5%? Okay. But we do not have guidelines for estimating these emissions and attributing responsibility, says Jonas, so they mostly remain off the books. Another gaping data hole is forest fires, says Yona. Globally, wildfires emit around 1.5 billion metric tons of CO2 annually, more than all but the world's top 5 CO2 emitters. Wildfires may be a natural hazard, but in many countries, they are mostly ignited by humans and are often made worse by poor fire management and fuel left in harm's way. That makes them anthropogenic, she argues. So, good point. Good point. These aren't caused by climate change, they're caused by humans. Okay, sorry. That makes them anthropogenic, she argues, so the resulting CO2 emissions should feature in national inventories of human-caused emissions, but mostly they don't. All right, I'm going to keep on reading this, but I just want to stop and acknowledge any and all tips or chats, super rays. That's what I'm talking about. You can also, you know the deal, guys. You can also super chat or tip on all the other platforms: PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, and all those links are, well, where you might find all the links. Anyways, got a Super Ray on Rockfin. From Denver, Attaway. Nice, thank you. Says happy Easter, Kevin. I do have a bit of a nightmare, a bit of nightmare fuel to share. IBOL.org, IBOL.org. We are the International Barcode of Life Consortium. What? What is this? International Barcode of Life. We are illuminating biodiversity. What? Well, hold on. What is DNA barcoding? Oh my God. So they want to, this is the, all in the name of cataloging and monetizing life, right? All life on Earth. That's what I can suss from this, right? Let's see. Well, that's an interesting link. Thanks, Denver. Just looking at this for a second. I mean, just that alone, we are the International Barcode of Life. Okay. Guys, there's a link here called Bioscan. We want to illuminate biodiversity by putting a barcode on everything. By tracking all of life, guys, so that we can monetize it. Right? Because ecosystem services is worth trillions of dollars a year. My God. Yeah, that's truly scary. Thanks for that. Jeez. Yeah, and then obviously it's essential things like water and food are gonna, well, water is quickly being commodified, and it's not going to be like something that humans are just supposed to have, like air and water. Well, food is already, heavily commoditized, right? So if you don't have any money or a job or aren't a part of the system, you can quickly, starve, go hungry, not have a place to live, et cetera, et cetera. The audio is trying to go on the fritz. Hold on. Is the audio okay, guys? Let me know. All right, guys, can you hear me? Or just give me a shout out real quick. I'm going to continue on this article. I'm going to assume you're still hearing me. I can't see nothing. I can't see it. Yes, okay, cool. It's mostly okay, not unbearable, just a little clicking here and there. There's a beat. It's kind of making a beat. I hear the beat too. Interesting. I think that's coming from my phone. I don't think that's okay. Did it stop? Because now it stopped for me. All right, I'm going to keep reading, but let me know, guys, if it's stopped. If it's really bad, I can just reset. Anyways, California's wildfire emissions have in some years been as great as those from the state's power stations, but the state government excludes them from its greenhouse gas inventories, even though they are large, measurable, reducible, and overwhelmingly caused by human activity, Jonas says. The problem of underreporting is compounded because, according to the public online record, many non-Annex 1 nations have been extremely slow in meeting their requirement to submit inventories every 4 years. Some backsliders are states at war or with unstable governments. Syria last filed in 2010, Myanmar in 2012, Haiti in 2013, and Libya has never filed. But others have no such excuse. The Philippines last sent us its inventory in 2014, and Guyana in 2012. Oh, there's a really great, that actually reminds me. Okay, yeah, that was weird. Okay, great. There's a great, sorry for being sidetracked, guys, but that's just how my brain works. There's a great interview with the president of Guyana, and I'm not going to play it today. Maybe I'll bring it to you tomorrow. Yes, or maybe I'll play it at the end of this article. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Anyways, most startling is Qatar, a major Gulf natural gas exporter with per capita emissions widely regarded as the highest in the world at more than 35 tons of CO2 per person. Qataris emit more than twice as much as Americans, but their government has only filed a formal inventory of those emissions once in 2011 and provided data for 2007. Since then, Qatar's actual emissions are thought to have almost doubled. Satellite data shows methane emissions from oil and gas fields globally are around 70% higher than governments claim. 70% higher than governments claim. The UNFCCC webpage on reporting rules says, without transparency, we are left to act blindly. But a spokesperson said in an email that the UNFCCC had no ability to compel countries to submit timely inventories, which are a non-mandatory requirement. Moreover, the spokesperson noted most non-Annex 1 parties face capacity constraints, including those for reporting. Peters retorted that Qatar could probably pay a team of 50 people to do the most accurate estimates of emissions ever, but it is not in their interests. Even when national returns are up to date and complete, uncertainties abound, says Efizio Salazzo, who studies pollution statistics for the European Commission's Joint Research Center in Italy. There are shortcomings in activity data. We don't know, for instance, how much fossil fuel is being burned in many countries, nor how much methane leaks from oil and gas fields and pipelines. There are also uncertainties in how reliably those activities are converted into emissions estimates. This is normally done using off-the-shelf formula developed by scientists for the UN, but critics say these formulae often fail to reflect real operating conditions. When John Liggio, an air quality researcher at Environment and Climate Change Canada, a government agency, cross-checked his government's declared emissions from the energy-intensive extraction of the oil sands deposits in Alberta, the results were embarrassing. Aircraft measurement of CO2 in the air above the tar sands suggested that the real emissions were 64% higher than those being reported. Sometimes whole industries are under a cloud. Satellite data analyzed by the International Energy Agency shows methane emissions from oil and gas fields globally are around 70% higher than governments claim, mainly because of unreported leaks and flaring. The U.S. industry is a major culprit here. Using measurements from hundreds of research flights over oil well fields, Evan Sherwin, a data analyst at the government's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, found that 3% of the methane tapped by American oil and gas wells leaks into the atmosphere, compared to the 1% estimate used in U.S. inventories. So that's triple what they're reporting. Globally, there are hundreds of what the IEA calls super emitter events annually, mostly from oil and gas fields. Outside the U.S., many of the worst are in Turkmenistan and other former Soviet states of Central Asia, which often still use decaying and leaky Russian-built infrastructure. One massive blowout in Kazakhstan last year took 200 days to plug. Governments globally claim forests are soaking up 6 billion tons more CO2 each year than scientists can account for, a study found. Oh my God. Again, the fudging of the numbers can enhance kind of the carbon trading or carbon sequestering or, climate credit scheme that's going on. And I'm sure that's why they're doing that. Sometimes the data gaps are more subtle. For instance, standardized emission factors for burning coal disguise the fact that different types of coal from different places have different emissions rates. Some studies have suggested that the poorer quality coal from many mines in China produces substantially less CO2 than the emissions factor suggests. But other studies suggest that the country often burns more coal than it admits to. So a cloud still hangs over the country's emissions inventories. China is making great efforts to improve the accuracy of its emissions inventory, says Yuli Shan of Birmingham University in the UK, who has tracked its data for years. But he notes that an assessment of China's fossil fuel emissions by the European Commission's emissions database for global atmospheric research found 23% more than recorded in the country's UN submission for the same year. Concerns about China have increased with the introduction of the country's carbon trading system, which analysts say could allow energy companies to profit by fiddling the figures. 2 years ago, China's Environment Ministry found 4 companies auditing offset claims had routinely tampered with coal samples, doctored test results, concealed energy output data, and provided fictitious verification reports for their power station clients, so cutting the declared emissions. Away from the energy industry, data discrepancies are often even greater. Emissions from some chemical processes and landfills are poorly assessed, says Salazzo. So are methane emissions from cattle and rice production, while estimates of the global release of nitrous oxide from fertilized soils could be undercounted by a factor of 3. Sorry, hold on, guys. Sorry about that. Alarm bells are ringing. Okay. There may also be previously unconsidered anthropogenic emissions. This month, ecologist Tricia Atwood of Utah State University published calculations suggesting that fishing trawlers that churn up the ocean floor are releasing more CO2 into the atmosphere annually than Great Britain. Then there are forests. Geographer Clemens Schwingschakel at the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich found that governments collectively claim their forests are soaking up 6 billion tons more CO2 each year than scientists can account for. That gap is more than total U.S. emissions from all activities. The good news is that such ruses and national inventories are under even greater scrutiny from improved aircraft and satellite-based data collections. The accuracy of this work is being improved by better modeling of the tracks of pollution through the air and by testing air samples for carbon-14. This isotope, with a half-life of 5,700 years, is ever present in natural emissions of CO2, but absent from the burning of fossil fuels that have been buried for millions of years. That's interesting. I did not know that. NOAA researchers have recently used this to track U.S. fossil fuel emissions more precisely and say they could do this for other nations too. But the bad news is that this new data rarely reaches national inventories, which remain stuck in old, often self-serving ways. While that continues, the data gaps between reported emissions and the actual gases accumulating in the atmosphere will persist, and the world will remain unclear about who is responsible and what is required to meet climate targets. Yeah. Well, that is quite enlightening. Very enlightening indeed. And you know, I think that we could probably guess, you know, that this has been going on. The underreporting, undercounting, overcounting in some places of emissions, or what emissions are being soaked up. You know. All in the name of keeping things going, keeping business as usual going at a steady clip. Right. Let's see. Hold on one second here, guys. I think I'm going to play this video for you before I get out of here of the Guyanese president. See, just checking back in on a couple of just checking in on any other contributions to the show. All right. Okay. Yes. The chat is cranking today. Indeed, and agreed. Where is it? I had it, and then I lost it. This is the president of Guyana speaking to BBC's Stefan Sacker. And this is a pretty great interaction here. And I'm just trying to get it up on the screen.
Let's take a big picture look at what's going on here. Over the next decade, 2 decades, it is expected that there will be $150 billion worth of oil and gas extracted off your coast. It's an extraordinary figure. But think of it in practical terms. That means, according to many experts, more than 2 billion tons of carbon emissions will come from your seabed, from those reserves, and be released into the atmosphere. I don't know if you, as a head of state, went to the COP in Dubai.
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. Do you know that Guyana has a forest forever that is the size of England and Scotland combined? A forest that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon, a forest that we have kept alive, a forest that we have kept alive.
Does that give you the right? Does that give you the right to release all of this carbon?
Does that give you the right to lecture us on climate change? I am going to lecture you on climate change because we have kept this forest alive that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon that you enjoy, that the world enjoy, that you don't pay us for, that you don't value, that you don't see a value in, that the people of Guyana has kept alive. Guess what? We have the lowest deforestation rate in the world. And guess what? Even with our greatest exploration of the oil and gas resource we have now, we will still be net zero. Guyana will still be net zero. With all our exploration, we'll still be net zero.
Powerful words, Mr. President. But a couple.
I am not completed as yet. I am not finished as yet. I am just not finished as yet. Because this is the hypocrisy that exists in the world. The world in the last 50 years has lost 65% of all its biodiversity. We have kept our biodiversity. Are you valuing it? Are you ready to pay for it? When is the developed world going to pay for it? Or are you in the pockets? Are you in the pockets of those who have damaged the environment? Are you in the pockets, are you and your system in the pockets of those who destroyed the environment through the Industrial Revolution and now lecturing us? Are you in their pockets? Are you paid by them? Are you paid to keep their
Mr.
message?
Heated exchange. That was pretty good. You know, I'm not necessarily supporting his quest or goal to develop these oil fields. And this is a big problem now with industrialized countries or Western countries or whatever you want to call it, developed nations, talking about climate change and climate change commitments and seeking, I don't know what you want to call it, DEI or whatever you want to call it, seeking these commitments by different countries around climate change. When we've already done so much damage. And is it any wonder that these developing nations are like, well, you guys are rich and have all the stuff now, right? And now you're saying that we can't have all the stuff or shouldn't do certain things in order to enrich ourselves. This is the conundrum, or what is the word that I'm looking at? This is the predicament that we're in, is because these developing nations want to have all the stuff that we have, right? And until we actually decarbonize or degrow or deconsumerize ourselves, I don't know that we're going to be able to ask other countries to live up to these commitments that we have set forth, right? So anyways, it was an interesting exchange there, and I appreciated the fieriness of the Guyana president talking about that. But the problem is I do agree on one hand that they shouldn't develop these oil reserves. But is it the right of Britain or Western countries to tell them whether they can do this or not? I don't know. It's a good question. He also said that they have the lowest rates of deforestation. I don't know if that's true or not. He's the president of Guyana. He could just say anything. Plenty of presidents lie and obfuscate the truth, but if that's true, well, that's great. All right, I got another. Let's see. Got another Super Ray on Rockfin from Rich Diana. Thank you. Thanks, Rich. I appreciate you. Right on. Yes, and you got, guys, your tips are very, very well appreciated. You guys keep this show going. I don't have any sponsors for the show. I don't really charge people money to watch this show. I don't make people subscribe to watch this show. I don't know if that's going to change in the future, but for the moment, this show is free to you to watch pretty much on the daily, or at least 5 days a week, sometimes on the weekends. And if you enjoy the show, then, support the show. That's all I can tell you. But thanks, guys. To those that support the show, I really appreciate you. You know who you are, and there are plenty of people that support the show on the regular. So thank you. All right. Going to make sure I didn't get any other contributions before I get out of here. Don't want to leave anybody out. All right. Okay. Anyways, guys, thank you. I will see you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you all tomorrow around 11 a.m., which is the new time. The new time. The new old time. The old time is now the new time for Black Bear News, 11 a.m. Pacific. And for anybody that's going to watch my music gig, YouTube gig tonight, I'll see you tonight. And until next time, peace.